Welcome to the Behind Enemy Lines podcast with Tyree Evans. So today I want to speak to you guys about the Byron Allen case that's coming up November 13th, Byron Allen versus Comcast, and the significance of this case. So the importance of it is that if Comcast wins, it essentially says that African Americans will have to provide 100% proof that a company shows discrimination and prejudice towards that entity or that company or that person 100% in order for people that's disenfranchised, that's marginalized, and that's are basically targeted in America to say that they cannot get ahead. So on November the 13th, you must support Byron Allen so you can understand that institutional racism is very real. So these are the facts of the matter. Comcast, Charter, these are major cable companies that pay for licenses and provide licensing. So last year alone, Comcast spent $25 billion on TV licensing, and to all African American media programs, they spent less than $3 million with those companies. So out of $25 billion, you didn't even spend 1/10 of a fraction of it, basically, by only giving $3 million to predominantly African American media companies. That shows discrimination in itself, right there at that point. Now, you have Byron Allen, who bought the Weather Channel, who bought 11 other cable networks, who Comcast has not provided any funding or licensing for to allow him to get the distribution that he needs. That is discrimination at its finest, especially when you see other networks that are less as advanced as Byron Allen's networks, less noteworthy as Byron Allen networks, less content than Byron Allen networks, but they somehow have licensing from Comcast. That does not make sense. So on November the 13th, this case goes to the Supreme Court. This is the first time that I have ever heard that somebody who was once the defendant who was with Comcast, being the NAACP, the Comcast paid the NAACP to stay quiet about the discrimination that was taking place as far as TV programming was concerned with Comcast. Now, they have been taken off the docket as far as being sued by Byron Allen, to the point that they have joined sides. The NAACP has joined sides with Byron Allen and wrote an amicus brief in Byron Allen's support going against Comcast. Al Sharpton was paid off by Comcast to not say anything about the discrimination that has been taking place through licensing at Comcast. So again, I never thought Al Sharpton was for us as people. I think he goes to the highest bidder, and this shows proof of that. So we must support Byron Allen, because if this case is lost, if this trial is lost by Byron Allen, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 that came post-slavery, so institutions would not be able to discriminate against former slaves in America. You will have to show 100% that person is being discriminated against based solely on their race. So it could be 99% race and 1% because that person has tennis shoes on, 1% because that person voted for Barack Obama, 1% because that person is a Republican, 1% because that person is a Democrat, and so forth and so forth. That is obscene. That is not right. It has to become common law that discrimination is viewed, and I pray that the Supreme Court, that is very conservative, understands that this is an injustice not only to African Americans, but to what America says it stands for. When the Statue of Liberty was erected and given from France to us, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, when our founding fathers, be it most of them owned slaves, and be it that they spoke of liberty in a sense only for white men, be it, if we want to stay true, if we want to be progressive, if this is the age of people being woke and that equality is on the verge, we must support Byron Allen. We must ensure that he wins this case. We must hold Comcast, Charter, and any other cable company that provides licensing accountable for the things that they are doing to the African American community, because this case represents so much as far as symbolism goes. I don't want white America controlling the narrative of how African Americans are presented. I don't want you in control of how our sons, our daughters, our fathers, and mothers are presented on screen. Like, if you think about it, one of the recent movies I went to go see was Harriet. And granted, I liked the movie for entertainment value purposes. It was a good movie. But me being who I am and understanding how the peculiar institution known as slavery was really put together and how they treated African Americans, it looks like Harriet Tubman is running away from her long lost cousins that she doesn't want to be around, like they were a family and they just had to get away from their family because their family abused them. No, slavery was horrific. And I want you to see it for what it actually was. I want you to see the ugliness of it. I want you to see how they downgraded, belittled, basically tortured these people in order to control them. Like, movies show you this perspective that's very whitewashed to make it seem like slavery wasn't as bad as what it was, but really it was just that bad. Being tarred and feathered, being whooped, being belittled, being treated as you were not human, right? And they in a movie, they romanticize it like Harriet Tubman went to plantation and started singing and Negroes just took off running. No. And slave catchers didn't do anything. Like, the reality of it is, it was ugly, it was horrific, and that has to be shown in order for us to appreciate where we are now, and in order for us to have a drive to keep going. Because if we water it down, it says to people, we've arrived. And essentially, when you have instances like this where Comcast, the people in power, quote unquote, who act like they sign in African Americans, but rather just paying them off so they don't have to give you quality programming, so they don't have to show you in the light that you should be seen as. When you can do a movie about Egyptians and it uses white people, that is them controlling the narrative. Think about it. Egypt is in northern Africa. Do you think white people were indigenous to, just based on the temperature and the climate and the geography of Egypt, you understand that that would be darker people. Now, they don't have to be African American or be dark as me, but they are definitely darker people. So when you get white actors to play the roles of Egyptians, that is you enhancing your history, but downplaying ours. Because I have yet to see white people do a movie on the Dark Ages. I have yet to see white people do a movie on cannibalism because they control the narrative and they hide their part of who they are, because that's the reality of the matter. I have yet to see white people do a full-fledged movie on incest or how slave masters, like famous slave masters, that they should do the Andrew Jackson story and tell the whole story. Right? Not Andrew Jackson, Thomas Jefferson. They should do the Thomas Jefferson story and tell a whole story. How he loved black women, right? Because this shows you the power that we have, and we get to see ourselves in the perfect image that we are supposed to be represented. So November the 13th, make sure you are following it along. Make sure you are holding your Supreme Court accountable. And if this doesn't go well, it doesn't go well across the board, because if he loses this case, essentially, it is telling all others who want equality in America, who want institutionalization in America, not to be discriminative against, they will have to prove 100% of the time that it is solely based on color. It can be 60% based on color, but if 40% is just based on business practices, they are not going to give you the funding, the licenses, or whatever you may need to get your feet off the ground. So I encourage you to support Byron Allen, follow the case, write letters, make phone calls, do whatever needs to be done in order so the Supreme Court can understand that this case is more than just Byron Allen wanting his TV shows and his networks ran and distributed through Comcast. This is Byron Allen standing up for African Americans and saying, this is how we should be seen. This is how we should be depicted. This is what we represent. And literally, we have a monopoly of African American representation at this moment. When you think of like Tyler Perry and his studios, that is amazing, but some people don't like what Tyler Perry stands for in the African American community because the way he got his. And I'm not downplaying it. If he had to be Medea to get it, so be it. Like, I don't know that brother personally. I don't know his morals and what he stands for. But if it's just a character and he had to do that to become what he is today, for African Americans to benefit and other minority groups to benefit, then so sometimes you got to do what you got to do. By no means am I condoning the emasculation of African American men. By no means am I saying that all families are broken. By no means am I saying that black men downplay black women on a regular basis, because that's what the general consensus say about Tyler Perry's movies. What I'm saying is, I want to see it from Tyler Perry's perspective. I want to see it from Byron Allen's perspective. I want to see it from Spike Lee's perspectives. I want to see it from Oprah Winfrey's perspectives. But I want to see it by us, for us, because literally, we are not just a perfect people. All things are not great, and that's everybody. But our story deserves to be told from our lenses and not monetized to the point, or excuse me, are not focused in to the point where it says this is black exploitation and this is how we want to portray blacks. Like the Byron Allen case, in my opinion, is a great similarities to the movie Dolomite. Which came out on Netflix by Eddie Murphy. It showed a black man who wanted to be more, who wanted to show things more. And granted, again, some people may say, oh, the movie that they put together wasn't a good movie, or didn't show it's all facets. I want the whole thing. Everything is just not intellectual prowess. Sometimes we like to turn up. We like to eat great food. We like to sit back and listen to stories. So whatever story that director chose to give, I feel like Dolomite gave a great story of what's going on with the Byron Allen case versus Comcast. And my final point on it is that when you sit down and dissect the case, make sure you understand that Byron Allen is a billionaire. He doesn't have to take on this crusade. He is standing up for something that is very important and that needs to be spoken about and needs to be seen on the forefront. So I like to shout out people like the Breakfast Club, Groit, the publication, and everybody else who has did articles on this case to draw awareness to it, to show that institutionalized racism and institutionalized discrimination is very much alive and well in America. And a great man is going up to bat for African Americans, and we must have his back when he does it. Peace and light. Have a great time. Until next time, Behind Enemy Lines podcast with Tyree Evans.